Here follows an extract from my book Artful Designs, available from Amazon. Chapter 11, Part 2. What on earth was he doing down in the archives? How long had he been there? Asked Drew. All sorts of questions came tumbling into his mind. Then, after seeing Benedict's expression, Drew realised that he hadn't yet heard the full story. He looked at his brother-in-law and steeled himself for what was to come. How did he die, Benji? Did he suffer? I really am very sorry to have to tell you this, Drew. It's not nice, I'm afraid. He was strangled. Oh, how awful. Drew sat with his head in his hands as he imagined his friend's last tortured moments. Forbes is on his way and Maddox and I will be meeting him there. I presume that you'll want to come with us. Benedict phrased this as a question, but he knew that Drew would want to face the situation head on. Drew nodded his agreement and his face took on a resolute expression as he prepared to face some ugly scenes. Understanding the quiet strength of his gentle brother-in-law, Benedict recognised Drew's determination to right these wrongs. It was a way to cope with such bitter truth. We will get to the bottom of this, Drew. Whatever it takes, we'll find whoever did this, said Benedict. Beth knew that Drew needed to chase this one on his own in order to find peace, and so she stayed home so as to be ready with food and comfort when he returned. Some might laugh, but such practicality was tried and tested over the ages. Food was indeed the way to many hearts, and Drew's heart would need some extra care and consideration. Let folks laugh. Beth knew how to care for those she loved. On arrival at the gallery, a sepulchral silence reigned, broken only by Sally's gradually subsiding sobs. Theo was administering the time-honoured remedy of tea, which was gradually working its wonders after her shock from finding Rick in such grisly circumstances. Seeing Benedict, Brian made a hasty beeline to clear his reputation. I can't believe that this has happened, sir. Not on my watch again. I don't know what more I can do. Whatever I do, the fiend works around me. Nobody holds you responsible, I'm sure, reassured Benedict. Your conscientious approach is never in doubt. Just tell me what happened. I'm on days this week. I did the usual handover at 6 a.m. and there was nothing to report. After the fiasco of the break-in, I was determined not to get caught out, and so I stayed in the security lodge watching the monitors like a hawk. You know I don't like being cooped up in here for too long, so when I couldn't stand it any more, I walked into the foyer to stretch my legs a bit. I kept flicking through the screens on my tablet, and there was absolutely nothing to see. I kept a special eye on that glass roof. I know it's been repaired, but once bitten, twice shy and all that. The cameras are also heat and motion sensitive, but nothing set the alarms off, said Brian. Well, there wouldn't be either of those elements, would there? Neither were available to the poor man, said Benedict. It's not your fault that you didn't detect anything. How would you guess something like that? Ordinarily, I'd have patrolled around, but that got me into trouble last time. I just can't win. If I'd stuck to my usual routine, I'd have found him, said Brian. And he'd still have been dead, said Benedict. I know that, but I just feel so foolish. A dead body and I didn't know. What kind of security guard is that? Don't be so hard on yourself. Go and make yourself a brew and I'll come back to you after I've been downstairs. We'll put our heads together and then see what we can come up with. Pacified by James's reassurance, Brian went back to his security suite, Naffy tea calming him as Earl Grey had calmed Sally. Drew smiled in appreciation of what he'd heard in the exchange. Benedict had calmed the distraught guard and yet still made him feel a valued part of the team. Realigning his thoughts to prepare for the spectacle below, Benedict squared his shoulders and, taking Maddox and Drew with him, headed down to the archives. After passing the PC on guard, they stood on the threshold of the archives surveying the tragic scene, where Drew and Rick had amicably chatted, taunting each other's artistic preferences. Rick now lay next to an overturned chair with arms and legs outstretched. Drew knew that it had to be Rick, as Benedict had told him so. The particularly dapper clothes, now uncharacteristically disarranged, and the long limbs supported the theory. But the face bore no resemblance to the one that Drew had hoped one day to call friend. The once consistently composed face was now grotesquely contorted, and dried blood covered the bottom and sides of his face. Drew turned away and stepped into the corridor to gather his wits. Forbes raised his head from scrutinising the corpse to see the figures in the doorway and waved them in. He shrugged his shoulders to indicate that their caution not to contaminate the scene was unnecessary. "There's nothing here to spoil. The place is as clean as a whistle. I've taken a few dust and fibre samples for form's sake, but I can't think there's anything new to find. What you see is what you get here, I'm afraid. You don't need me for this case. You can see it all for yourself." "It's as plain as day," said Forbes. Benedict let Maddox pass through first and then guided Drew into the room, keeping an eye on both, being fully aware that this was their first taste of gruesome death. "Come on in, Drew," said Benedict. "I think it's important that you hear what Forbes has to say for yourself." Picking up the discarded chair, he motioned for Drew to sit down, but both Maddox and Drew manfully opted to stay standing. For the full book of Artful designs, available in paperback or as an ebook, follow the link in the cards in the description box or find details on my website at sharonbill.com. Thanks for listening.